Hello and welcome to another episode of Cloud Security Podcast, or as we call it, Virtual Coffee with Ashish over here. Today, I have a really interesting guest because we have a really interesting topic. I hope you're here to hear about security chaos engineering because this guy has been talking about it for some time, and I could not wait. I know we had Aaron, and Aaron kind of just got us a few teasers into the chaos engineering world. And I'm not gonna spoil his introduction, so I'm gonna bring him in. But if you're here for the first time, this is Cloud Security Podcast. We stream every week. We talk about every topic on running technology on the cloud space. So this is where you would hear about cloud security and anything to do with cloud every week on this live stream. Or we live stream to YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Periscope as well. So without further ado, let me bring the gentleman. Hey, how's it going?
Good morning. Good.
Good. I can hear you. You can hear me. So just doing a sound check quickly. Perfect. And just get the camera right so people don't have to stare into our faces, I guess. Welcome, Jerome. I think it's a tradition, so I'm going to start with that first. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, Jerome, for people who don't know you, may not have heard of you, they probably should know this, that you're awake at 5 a.m. for us. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think everyone really, oh, there you go. Someone is the first comment of the day is coffee. Yes, definitely one coffee. I've got Uday as well saying good day to you, which is the Australian way of saying good day, good morning. Good morning, Vineet. So, for people who don't know Jerome, who is Jerome apart from this awesome, energetic guy who wakes up at 5 a.m. and is ready to serve his community?
Awesome, energetic guy. I don't know, but who is Jerome? A French guy working in security. Currently working for VMware on everything we call modern application platform. So everything that is cloud native platforms. I hold an interesting title, security modernization.
Yes.
And that's really linked on the fact that basically I'm an advisor to customers. And if you look at what modern applications and cloud native platforms are doing, they've changed the way we do security. They've changed the way we do IT. They enable DevOps. They enable modern ways of developing and modern application patterns. And if you double click on that, there is a lot of opportunities for security by using by using cloud native platforms, by using new technologies that allow us to do and rethink the way we do security. And my role is there, just helping customers. Usually when customers come to us, they are in their journey of transforming the application or adapting and adopting DevOps or those practices. And so I help them trickle it down in terms of reviewing how we do security. A lot of the security we've been doing for years is fairly traditional, like following a standards, making sure you have those controls in place and all those things.
Yeah.
And you just have to open a newspaper to see that it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. And you just have to listen to developers, IT, and security to realize there is a chasm, there is a fight between the different teams.
Yeah.
And there is opportunities in modern practices to fix this, and that's where I come in, where I help customers going and bridging the gap between security and the rest of the world.
Perfect. And we definitely need people questioning the traditional security as well, just because. And I think it's good that people like you exist, right? You're able to kind of convey the fact that it's okay to be different. It's okay to not have something work which is traditional. Let's move on to the next thing. I think the best example to this is that if we would have always continued using traditional paths, we would not have a car. We would still be riding horse carts, right? So someone just need to help in the transition, and I'm glad people like you exist to help in the transition. I guess the first question then, from starting from the space, is what is security chaos engineering for people who don't know? And I know it's a very broad question, so what's your definition of it?
So you had Aaron in the past, so you probably had the 3-hour definition of
Yes.
security chaos is 3 hours speaking like 10 times faster than everyone else. Yeah, security chaos engineering is an emerging practice, and that's really tailoring on what chaos engineering is in general. If you take the general term would be the practice is a practice of continuously testing that your security works by injecting failures into it or by injecting potential issues into it and making sure that you don't believe that your security controls work, you actually test them, right? And you validate the fact that you're able to detect and respond to potential issues. That's the theory of it. In practice, if you look at it, it's really, and that's why I'm such an advocate of it, is that if you look at the human aspect today, there's a gap we have between security, between the other teams and the practices. The modern attacks or the advanced attack are usually not picked up by a SOC or by traditional static attack. You need to understand what your application is doing to be able to find anomalies. And the way of making sure the different teams know how to work together, know how to find and spot those anomalies is to test it and test it and test it. So making sure that you create confidence. You create the confidence in your team and in your organization so that people can be bold and know that they are able to pick up the signal, and then they can try to experiment with the risk of breaking their security controls.
And to your point, these are they related to chaos engineering experiments? Is that what we are really testing? And what is experiment for people who don't know experiments?
It is a subset. If you look at chaos engineering, is really born of with the goal of increasing the reliability of the system and injecting failure to make sure that one, your system is able to withstand potentially failure and self-heal, but also your teams are able to pick it up and respond fast, right? So it's creating this, it's testing your muscle and making sure that you're trained as an organization and not the system itself. And security chaos engineering is applying this principle of continuous failure injection and experimentation on the system to the security outcomes. And if you look at a lot of the modern security practices, we're moving towards, DevSecOps, security champions, doing your threat models to be able to tailor what security controls should be with what the application is supposed to do. Security chaos engineering is natural, is about you identify what you expect your application to do, what are the security outcomes of the application, and you test this hypothesis by by making sure that it actually do it. So you will expect some security controls, you will have some potential attack vectors, and you will test them by injecting basically potential failures into it.
Oh, so I guess to your point, examples of this could, for example, be, I don't know, your server should not be accessible on port 22 or 443. What is one of those examples, like an experiment? I'm just thinking
that would be the most basic, but that's not really chaos because it's just a fault scan. That's what everyone does already. But let's take an example of an attack. And if you look at, for example, Capital One started with misconfiguration, someone stealing credentials and other things. So you would start with identifying what are the potential ways to get into the crown jewels or to get to the objective. And if you start with, okay, someone creates an account. So are you able to detect if someone creates an account, right? So you inject a creation of an account in your environment, and are you able to pick it up? But also, if suddenly you have a node you have a credential that is not supposed to be used by this node, are you able to detect that someone is accessing this service credential from somewhere different or on a different aspect? So you will look at all the patterns and try to identify and inject, instead of just doing it theoretically, but you actually create it in the environment. So you basically test that you're able to pick up any potential misconfiguration, any potential attack by testing it.
Interesting. And to your point, It's a great example. So if I'm able to create an account and if I'm able to validate whether I should be able to create an account or not, is that something running which is running continuously, or is that something like a point in time experiment that people run?
Yeah, so usually in the same philosophy that chaos engineering is, you don't, well, you could be expecting it to do continuously, but you also want to give some slack to your teams. So it's mostly run as experiments. So the chaos engineering community call this game days. So you pick a day where everyone is aware that you're going to do the day, but you because you don't want to disrupt your production too much.
Yep.
If something goes wrong, you need people to say, okay, well, let's stop the game. But that's really about everyone is aligned, and let's say let's do a game day on this day. We're gonna test that the controls are working, and you have predefined scenarios, and you experiment them. So everyone is aware. You don't want to do that in the back of people. That's really one of the things that changed today. And if you look a lot of modern security practices, the change is it's not a blame game, right? The goal is not for security to find problem and tell you're bad, right? It's everyone will learn the outcome, and we learn whether controls work well, whether they could be improved. So everyone is here to learn, and everyone is here to build confidence over time, right? So when you start, you would start very small, and over time you build confidence and you do more advanced game or experimentations. And it's really a very important aspect that it's not blue vs red or anything, right? It's let's go, let's sit together, let's try to improve our knowledge and our experimentation of what the application is doing. One of the side effects of cloud and cloud native is complexity, right? I talk about cloud native very positively, but let's be very honest. When you change a monolith by 60 or 100 different microservices, the potential effect of all the interaction makes it very difficult to apply static security, right? So you need to have teams that know very well how things work, who are able to respond to anything going wrong. You always have something weird going wrong when you have very complex system. Security chaos engineering is this aspect of saying, we want this product team, the team that is behind this application, to not only know when a node goes down, when performance is down, but when something security related happens, we want them, and we want everyone to be able to pick it up and respond. And you would have interaction required from product team being able to say, hey, this is not normal. This could be security. Let's pick up the phone and get an expert to go into it, or actually respond to it automatically. That's really this flex muscle that you're trying to do. And it doesn't happen if your security controls is a blame. If you just say you're bad, you missed the control, or if you act like an audit, no one will ever just look at it positively, right? So it's really a culture as well as a practice.
That's a perfect segue into a question that came from Erwin. I should be able to see it on the screen now. How do we balance between putting security controls versus developers' convenience?
Very good question. If your security controls, and let's be honest, if your security controls makes the life of your developer hell, then they will never implement the controls, and they will always find a way to bypass it. Or at one point, that means your security controls might not be the right one. And it's important to understand that the goal of security is not to make sure nothing happens, right? So we're in an organization for the business to flourish, to serve the customers. And if your control it goes against business, then maybe there is other ways to do it. What we've seen through experimentation, and I might be from VMware, I joined through a company called Pivotal that is very a pioneer in DevOps and pioneer in extreme programming. What we've seen is very often the same technology and the same practices that makes developer productive actually makes your security better without security tools. And so that's really where you want to see, is there another way of doing your security controls that doesn't go against developers? The developers nowadays are the ones generating the value for your company, right? All the new services you're developing, you're trying to compete with or start a startup. If you make their life hell and slow, then you know that the startup will take up your business in the next few years. So it's really about finding the balance, but you will see, I don't want to enter the details, but very often the same tools and practices that makes your developers productive actually could be used for improving security.
Is there an example that you can share? And I think the reason I'm asking is because there's another comment that came through that from Uday, who's a regular listener as well. Buy the developer a pizza first before dropping a hammer.
Yes. Well, the hammer shouldn't be on the developer. Should be usually when you have problems, it's rarely the engineer. It's probably either the organization is toxic, the management has wrong objectives, or you might have just very often it's just the objectives of security and developers are not aligned, and there is no commitment of, okay, these are the key things where we need to be improved. In Pivotal, we had a motto and our own internal cyber hygiene. We call the 3 R's. And I think it's a good example of how cloud native helps, right? We call it the 3 R's is your ability to repair, to repave, and to rotate everything. Repair meaning when you find that you have vulnerability, how quickly are you able to fix it? And if you look at Agile and DevOps, it's all about making developers able to change code fast. But ability to change code also means ability to fix things, right? So if you work in a culture where people care about security vulnerabilities, you're not making it, but you also help them develop faster and release faster. And that comes with a number of things in the backend, and you actually increase the speed at which you can fix vulnerabilities. And that, if you look in DevOps, it's all about improving the developers' practices so that when they push something to production, you have enough tests so that they push and they have a very low chance of breaking something, right? The reliability of change is one of the most important factors in DevOps. But the reliability of change also gives the confidence that you can push and apply a patch without breaking anything. So we have customers who are able to apply the patches without even telling developers, like, hey, by the way, there is a new version of Apache. They launch it to production. They have so much good tests that they have a 99 or 99% chance of delivering without breaking anything. And so it's all fully automated. And when you work towards making that efficiency, then you help the developers, but you also help security. So that's for the ability to repair. If you look at the ability to repave, which is instead of just taking a server and just changing the code, adding things to it, just destroy and rebuild everything, right? Yeah, and that's where microservices in cloud native is very useful. If you run several nodes, everything is immutable and stateless, and you know that you deploy a new version of the app regularly, several times a day, you just destroy it, recreate a new VM, recreate everything. Well, it gives you, from a security perspective, the ability to make sure that you have no malware into it. You haven't been breached because you just created it. And so that gives a lot of benefits, because that means if you do it regularly, then you reduce the chance of having been breached, you reduce the attack window for lateral movement. But also that means that the day you have a breach, your incident team can go and say, okay, let's capture the data, and until we find what was the vulnerability of the 0 day, how we got breached, let's repave regularly. You know you can do it, right? So let's destroy and rebuild until we know how we got breached. Then we fix the vulnerability. That gives everyone the confidence, because that makes it increasingly exponentially expensive for attackers, right? And the third of the 3 R's is rotate, and that's really a very, very important factor today. Increasingly, breaches have to do with credentials being stolen, being service credentials or user credentials. And if you're automated all your pipeline so that you can change the credentials regularly, all of them, you have 2 benefits. First is usually that means the developer never needs to have the credentials of your database or your service in the first place, because it's generated by the platform. So you remove the risk of malware being on the developer's workstation and being stolen. But also that means that if you rotate it every week, every month, the probability of someone finding it and using it within this window is very small, right? So that's really an example of how you can use what the developers are doing to actually improve security without buying additional security control that goes in a way. You can actually use the
Yep.
same practices to reduce your exposition. And if you
I
look
think
at
it's a great
Verizon report
example.
every year,
Yeah.
Verizon report every year, 95 to 98% of breaches have to do with those three controls. Like, if you do that well, if you do that regularly as a let's do it regularly as a normal practice,
Yeah.
you actually reduce massively your risk of breach. And you haven't just put anything in the ways of developers. You actually help them because you say, hey, let's make you more productive, right? We
Yeah.
all
And
agree.
sorry, I was going to say to your point, it's really interesting that you mentioned that the 3 Rs and rotating credentials. Because do you feel there's a way, and this kind of goes back to the whole concept that even DevOps always expected security to be part of it, right? There's no architecture that doesn't talk about security. It just security sometimes ignored by some people. But to your point, as you're developing the 3 Rs for rotating credentials, or it just those little things can be put in the beginning so that you don't have to kind of go back and go, well, it's great you want to go to production tomorrow, but we need to put this in. So do you
Yeah.
find I guess it needs to have the foundational pieces set before you can kind of implement the 3 Rs, or is that something that like what's an example? I mean, I guess you mentioned Pivotal, which is I think a lot of people, I don't know how many people don't know. I would imagine everyone knows about it, but it was a really interesting company, and what they were trying to do as well. This still exists, I believe. It's talking about them in the past tense, but I've loved the fact that. Do you find there's an example of maturity that you can share? And I think it would be really interesting to hear a simple example maybe that you can share of this, where you were able to, if you have one. I'm trying to. I may have put you on the spot, but if you have an example, that would be awesome as well.
No, I mean, let's be honest, these three things seem simple. It requires a certain maturity to it. It also requires a certain mindset and a certain culture to it. And that's really what Pivotal is about. And by the way, it still exists. It's just part of VMware now.
Yeah. Oh, good to know. Yes. Oh, that's why you're a VMware. Sorry. Yep. You're right.
So, if you look, I mean, we have a number of customers who are very vocal about the benefits that those practices are doing, and no one will tell you, yeah, it's click and go ahead and click, right? Obviously, when we talk about repaving, you won't do that if you're still running with physical servers, bare metal servers that you install by hand. You wouldn't reinstall regularly. When you work on cloud technologies, and creating a VM is 2 minutes, right? If you work with application platform or a modern platform, then deploying the application on it and rebuilding the application on top is a matter of minutes as well. And so, yes, you could theoretically do that on everything. It requires a certain level of automation that is linked to your DevOps capability, right? And so it requires pipeline. It requires cloud technology in your backend. Let's be very clear, cloud native. It doesn't have to be public cloud. It can be on premises. All this is doable anywhere. So it requires something, but also it requires a certain maturity of developers' practices. Test-driven development is a very big factor of your ability to push code without breaking anything, right? If you want to change several times a day without breaking every 2 times you push something, you need to have very good hygiene on testing and making robust code, right? And so we go through this journey with our customers. We have customers who are open about it. If you look at Wells Fargo, so you actually go publicly about it on how they've automated all the patching. So they have no human involved in patching now. And they do this repaving very regularly, several times a week, because they've seen the value. They've seen the value in terms of resilience when incident happens, but also from a security perspective. Even defense sector, the US Air Force has been pretty vocal about the value of those practices to them and how they consider it more secure than the old ways of putting the air gap and taking 6 months of paper review, 4,000 pages of documents for reviewing any change.
I don't think anyone wants to go back to those days. Yeah.
Yes, but that's interesting because very often when we look at security, we've had years of security as a quality control, as a control function, but blaming the banks for that. But the control functions tend to require people to document and to write and to explain what they're doing, what they're going to be, and an external party will go and approve it. But this actually goes into the way of developers being able to change fast, right? So it's really about automating a number of things, and it doesn't happen in one day. It's usually
it takes a while,
long
100%. And you kind of need the mindset as well. To your point, that everyone believes in the same mission. You always would find people who are like, I don't really like this. By the way, if you can hear the squeaking, that's my dog underneath the table who's just basically getting excited. Thank you for sharing the example. I think it's pretty good because I think I've got a few more people joining in. Paul just joined in as well. There's another question which is interesting. Is there an element of pen testing in security chaos engineering?
Interesting. Is there an element of pen testing in red teaming, in bug bounties, and in security? You could say yes. As long as you're actively testing your production system to try to find a fault, yes. Except that here the injection is from the inside. So you inject internally, you're not trying, I mean, you have privileged access already. But yes, it would be trying to reproduce the tail end of an attack. So you could say yes. It's not the port scan and all those stuff, but yeah, you're testing whether you're able to detect. It's mostly about you're testing whether you're able to detect if you've been breached, what happens, right? So the second hand of pen testing. And there is a gentleman, and I'm really bad with names, so I'll apologize to him, the founder of Signal Science, who used to be the CISO of Etsy.
Oh, Zane.
And yes, exactly. And so he framed it very, very well on his approach of bug bounty, right? It's not about finding a problem and blaming developers. It's about improving your capability to detect and improve from that, right? So it's the same aspect, and it's complementary to pen test bug bounties. It's really about continuously testing your environment to be able to know, to find problem, but also evidently to create confidence. You want your teams to be confident in their system so they can be bold, so that they can change things, right? Instead of like, oh, I don't know, if I change that, I might break something. You want everyone to say, okay, we know that if we change something and if there is a mistake, we're going to pick it up and we're able to respond and fix it within seconds. And so developers can be bolder. Platform teams can go and apply the patches automatically without telling developers or negotiating, because they know they're going to pick it up fast, right? So you take the application, you rebuild it with the latest version of Apache, and then you've patched, right? But it requires a certain confidence into it. And so they're all complementary. It's what makes the difference between a pen test and chaos engineering or a bug bounty is the culture that goes with it. Whether you're here to say, hey, we're going to find problems and this is wrong, we're going to block you from going to production if you find something, always like, this is here for an experiment for us to learn and improve, right?
Yeah, perfect. And a good answer as well. I think the way I probably, you hit the, I guess, the nail on the head, I guess, for lack of a better word, where I guess all of it is around the fact that you kind of have to think like an attacker anyways, and pen testing is the same, security chaos experience are the same as well. By the way, for people who are joining in, hi Paul and hi Gerald as well, I was going to ask them, I did not know this, but you guys who are watching this can hit the like or the share button or whatever. I didn't realize there was like these emojis in there that you could get. Feel free to hit those so that LinkedIn can know that you guys are enjoying this. Just saying that. Just a side note. Because yes, or even YouTube as well for that matter. Moving on to the next question. So we kind of spoke about the use cases as well. Now, if some of these people who are listening to this, I think Vineet got his answer. Hopefully, Arun got his answer as well. So some of these people who are listening to this and are thinking, oh, I need to bring in my use case, or I'm going to make a program for this. Where do I start?
Yeah, well, that's that's the $1 million question. There's some prerequisite. And theoretically, you can do it anywhere. You can do it small. Your boldness on making a program out of it will be very linked to a certain number of organizational behaviors. First is your product owners. So that if you look at DevOps being product teams fully owning whatever happens to a specific product or a specific application, they need to have a common understanding that security is also part of their job, right? If you're trying to build this culture of DevOps or chaos engineering, but they don't take ownership of security outcomes of their production, then it's going to be another, we're going to break your thing and we're going to blame you, and that won't work. So as long as you have this understanding that product teams are here to own and the life of their product, including ops, including security, and that the security brings an expertise or knowledge of what are the different attack scenarios and other things and can help and complement, that would be the baseline to start. Then after, it's always start small. Take one or two applications that you have a number of patterns already. I would think just start with the 3 hours. If you do that already, that gives a certain number of confidence in your ability to withstand and respond to this, and then build this flex muscle. Start with small scenarios that are not too complex. Just creation an account. Are you able to detect it? Are you able to detect if suddenly a container pops up in your environment? And then you can be more specific on the application itself. And then you will see that as you build confidence, you will be able to spread it. Security champions would be very important, because you do need to have a link between security and the developers team, but also you need to, as you will take one or two applications and learn from it, you need those people to be able to share with the rest of the organization to build their understanding and their knowledge, right? Today, there is it's not a book. We're writing a book about security chaos engineering, but it's not something you open and follow all the procedures because you're trying to build a culture of experimentation. So by definition, there is no book about how to experiment. But that's really the importance, to be able to create those things and inject and learn from it. At the end of the day, your security test case will be linked to what the application does and the threat model of this application. So it's very unique to your business. So that's why it's important to start small and build from there. One recommendation: don't try to do that on the AS400. But we've had questions like, hey, can I do that on my core banking system that runs on the AS400? Theoretically, you can, but then honestly, you will have less flexibility of injecting and recovering, and so less confidence in injecting failure in a static system. So start with the things that you can repair fast and that you can handle failure gracefully, right?
I was going to say, would you do this in production? And that's probably one of the most common questions I get about chaos engineering. Wait, are we running these experiments in production? And that would require a very different kind of approval for a lot of people. And maybe that's why you should start with small experiments. So do I need to do this in production, or can I start in dev or staging, then move to production?
Well, as in anything, would you start with a shotgun shooting at start small? If you look at the goal is really to have the confidence that you can do it in production, right? So eventually you will want to run it to production, at least to make sure that your systems are well configured and can handle that gracefully. You shouldn't probably start with production if you've never done a chaos experiment. That wouldn't be wise. But eventually, yes, you should work your way towards being able to go to production. That said, I know some customers who are running it as a pre-prod validation. So when they run on the testing environment, when they will run some chaos experiment to make sure that the application is able to withstand them. It's more of a continuous validation at that case, because it's predefined predefined scenarios. So they will just
Yep.
inject failures, non-failures, regardless of the application business logic. But at least is to create the ownership for the product team to say, if you want to go to production, your application needs to be able to withstand this kind of stuff, right? And so that's a good step. That's a good step in creating a baseline of resilience and security controls. But eventually, you will want to be able to do things that are not predefined, that are tailored for the application and that are in production. Don't do that until you have a certain level of confidence into it.
Perfect answer. And I think that's good. That's a good segue into a question that came from Jalpa as well. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Hi, Ashish and Jerome. Thanks for bringing together awesome topic. Enjoying this. A question: is chaos engineering and DevSecOps the same? If not, what is the difference?
Well, everyone who knows me knows that I'm going to have to bash on DevSecOps.
Well, let's start with what's your definition of what's your hatred towards DevSecOps about? I know it's in the industry, but people are like, it's a great marketing term, but I'm keen to know what's your story with DevSecOps, and then we can go into chaos engineering.
It's important as well. To me, there is no DevSecOps, there is DevOps done the right way, because when you do DevOps, you will want to cover compliance, risk, and all the aspects, and your finance aspect. So you want to look at all the other functions so that your product team is fully autonomous and able to deliver outcomes that are not impacting and that are integrating the rest of the organization, right? Otherwise, you typically in your path to production, you will have other hurdles. So it's DevStarOps to me is really about getting people to every control function should facilitate the job of developers so that when they deliver something, compliance is taken care of, security is taken care of, risk is taken care of. And so you don't have to have those long assessments and all those things of are you compliant, because you know it's already built in, right? So that's more my view of what DevStarOps is. That said, marketing terms have a good value of now all the people who were kind of avoiding the topic have no choice but to take security. There is a certain framework that comes into it and you can't avoid it. It started as basically security vendors trying to say, hey, you can automate our tools in your pipeline. But today it's kind of okay. So back to the question: is chaos engineering and DevSecOps the same? They are not the same. They are linked. I would say you can do it separately, but then DevOps is about a culture and automation DevOps is about getting product teams autonomous and able to deliver outcomes and learn from their systems and learn from the customers and deliver better and iterate on customer demands to provide better services, right? Chaos engineering is experiment on making sure what these delivers is able to withstand potential failure, being security, failures, network outage, all the aspects you have. So chaos engineering could be seen as a subset of DevOps in a way, as a practice. And I would say it's in most organizations is part of SRE, which is one of the implementation of DevOps. So they're very linked. Though you could do a chaos engineering experiment with a DevOps. I've mentioned earlier, it's kind of dangerous if you don't have a certain level of automation. I wouldn't start there, but they are not the same, but very much overlapping.
Yeah, perfect. And a great answer as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Jalpa. And I think it's a how do I say? It's not a taboo term in security, but it's definitely something which is DevSecOps as a term started off as like, why aren't we doing security in the first place? Why do we have to call it out? But now, I think to your point, so that vendors can get special, I guess, because certain areas of DevOps were just being forgotten. So this is a great way. I think I've even heard of DevFinOps as well. There's obviously DevSecOps, DevFinOps. There's DevStarOps, as you said.
It's interesting because in one of the grief I have about DevSecOps is that it's vendors who are trying to go in the pipeline. DevOps is not only about dev, it's ops as well. And in the DevSecOps model, there is not much about ops, right? There is not much about learning and improving constantly. And that's really where your chaos engineering, your bug bounties, and the culture will come into play. Is at the end of the day, your team that runs your DevOps, that runs and runs your system, needs to be able to pick up any security issues into the system, right? And so it's a learning experiment. It's about testing and creating this learning. So if in what DevOps should be, Dev and Ops, or the whole life cycle, then yes, chaos engineering, security chaos engineering is part of Dev star Ops. In the current definition that have been framed by most of the security vendors, which is mostly about just pipeline, then no, security chaos engineering is not part of the pipeline. So it's just
and I think
mostly about ops. I think in security we forget that the life of your product starts when it goes to prod. You won't get breached before you go to prod. And so still today, a lot of the controls are like predefined barriers before you go to production, and we're very, very loose and very, very weak in SecOps. Still, unfortunately, even with DevOps, there is still this culture of I send the logs to the SOC, so it's okay, it's covered. I can go back home and do my stuff. If you've ever seen a SOC that knows how your business application behaves, what is normal behavior or not, that can make a difference between a brute force and a guy who made a configuration mistake. Then they're already pretty advanced. It's not the case in many SOCs, and that's the bottom line of the issue here. Is there is this gap on everyone saying the other one is taking care of security. And I'm an advocate of chaos engineering because you can't do well security chaos engineering without bringing the both team together. And so
and I think it could be that bridge that can combine and maybe become an opportunity where developers and security can work together as well. I've got a few more comments coming in. I think for people who are watching this on YouTube, if you guys haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And I'm just plugging that in. Hit the like button if you don't. It's like I didn't even realize these things were possible for everyone else. I haven't been asking people to do it. So going to the comments, Paul is like, oh, here we go. I
love Paul's comment.
Yeah, I love it as well. It's like there is no DevOps without security. And it's really interesting how, actually, this is probably my favorite one. So he said there is no DevOps without security, but the problem is that lots of people claim success. Look at me, I'm doing the DevOps. And if you take a closer look, security is not a priority. So by using the term DevSecOps, you're emphasizing that the need for security has book-ended up by Dev and Ops. And I guess the thing that he mentioned, Dev, Kit, Cube, Playbook, Guardrail, Security, by design, Ops, they just put everything in there. So
AI. You forgot AI in
Oh, yes, AI is as well. AI, ML is kind of what's missing now. It's funny. We've been talking about the chaos programs as well. Have you, I guess, if someone's been doing some of the basic experiments already, like the ones that you mentioned where you already have a threat model established, and as part of the unit test, they may be doing this already. They're like, oh, maybe after listening to you, they might say, actually, cloud native services can allow me to do this even more natively. Is there I guess, a maturity level to this? Like, how do you know that you are mature? And is there an example of a mature person? And yeah, he just realized ML Dev CookOps. That's pretty much what we need.
On this one. I put a pin on this one and react to Paul's comment. Everyone claims to do DevOps. And I had a colleague who had a very interesting definition of agile that that was a very testing as well. Is when people are saying, "Hey, am I agile?" It's like, it depends. Can you push the button and take whatever is in your code repo right now and put it to prod? And would you press the button right now? If you're able to press the button and send it to prod without breaking anything, then yes, you are agile. And going back to DevOps and the things, that's why I love those 3 R's, because they are very simple things. But if you're not able to destroy everything and rebuild or deploy a new version and a whole stack of then you're not really doing DevOps, right? If your product team doesn't own the delivery and the outcomes of their product, they're not doing DevOps. So I have my 12 metrics of what security outcome you expect from a developer, from a product teams. And that's a kind of a way to look at it, right? When you find a vulnerability, how long it takes you to fix it is a good benchmark, right? If you say I'm doing DevOps, we still patch every 3 months, yeah, maybe not. Are you able to destroy and rebuild, right? Do you do that regularly? How long is your workload living, right? The longer it lives, and that's the change of mindset, right? The longer it lives, the longer there is a chance there is something malicious into it. And so we move from what we call the pet to the server you nurture for years to a cattle where you kill your product. So this is the kind of things you would look at in terms of measuring whether you're really doing DevOps in the ultimate ways. You can still do DevOps in the traditional way. That means improving your delivery, automating. But at the end of the day, if you really want to measure your maturity, there is a certain aspect of those 3 R's that you will need to look at. So that's for false comment. And then I'll remove the pin. And you mentioned about use case. If you want to learn on the use case shameless plug, there is a book that is about to be released already. They dig into it. There is a number of companies who are doing chaos engineering. Usually, the ones who do security chaos engineering are already doing chaos engineering. So you just have to look at who is bragging about chaos engineering. I know some of my customers doing it. I'm not sure I can say that they are doing it. Among the companies that we know are doing it are very open. There is Netflix. I mean, who thought that the company who started chaos engineering is doing security chaos engineering as well? There is a number of financial institutions. In banking, I know quite a number of those who were doing chaos engineering and are starting to run some security experiment into it.
And to your point, so how do you measure the maturity of it, though? Like, at what point would you say, oh, this is like when you look at it and like, oh, this is a pretty mature chaos engineering practice? Like, is there a point that someone can say that?
Well, first is if you start injecting failures in production, that means you already have a certain level of confidence into it. There is some tangible markers into it. I mean, the number of experiments you can run without breaking things already a certain number of maturity into it. The problem is there is a very important intangible marker, which is the confidence of your team. And if you look at the definition I was giving about Agile, are you able to push your code base right now to production and breaking nothing? And if you look from a platform perspective, are you able to rebuild completely your environment? If I ask you to rebuild and duplicate and rebuild and move all your production from here to there, it's a number of, I mean, it's a high mark, but that's a confidence level, right? So you want to, eventually all of that is to build confidence and to build building a reliable system is one thing, but you also want to enable your business, your developers and the rest of the business to go faster, to respond to demand. And that's this intangible factor. In DevOps, in other ways, I would say COVID was a very interesting case for Agile and those markers. People were looking at how do I know whether I'm Agile? Well, that's simple. If your company was trying to struggle, like how do I get people to work from home and all those things, then you're not really Agile. If your company was, okay, our customers need to have new services today because of this situation, because they're at home, they need different services. How do we get to see what they need and how we develop those services to capture this moment, right? That's what Agile is and what the goal of an organization is about. And in security, chaos engineering, there is a lot, and actually safety engineering, there's a lot about dependability. It's like, can your customers depend on you when there is a crisis? It's not only when there is a crisis on you, but when they are in crisis as well. And so all of these reliability engineering, including chaos engineering, is all about how do I create dependability? How can I be relied upon when something happens? And that's really this marker, right? So you have a number of small markers along the way, but the crown jewel is really on am I able to pivot my business to capture the moment of a crisis and to change product and service depending on the environment? If you are, that means developers have the confidence. If your security team doesn't shout on saying, we have so much vulnerabilities, that means they've worked enough with the developers to enable this, and so on and so forth, right?
And I think it's a question that came through, which is probably related as well. How important is organization culture when an organization becomes agile or DevOps?
If you've read about DevOps and you know that the anagram is CALMS, and the first one is culture, right? Yes, if you are, and even the DevOps reports of Dora said it very well. You just look at your Westrom model. If you don't have a culture of, if you have a culture of shooting each other and security saying you're bad and developers trying to avoid security because they are in a way, then you have a problem. You're going to have a hard time doing DevOps. You're going to automate a number of things, but that means that the day you have things that are out of the box, things are going to go a little bit haywire. And chaos engineering is all about out of the box, right? When you don't have an incident procedure, when you don't have something that is already scripted, how is your organization responding? And we've seen it. I mean, I think there's even studies about it. It's all about organizational resilience is all about culture, right? It's the ability of people to work together. In a very traditional ways, you know that when you have a security incident, the first few hours are used by the SOC to create context, like what's the normal configuration of the server, was this binary supposed to be there, yes, no, and it's like, what is the application doing? Is it normal that it's doing that? And it's unfortunate, right? Because these few hours are what you should be spending actually responding to the incident. And chaos engineering creates this knowledge, because if you've already done a number of drill, if your product teams already knows how to do some things and can work with security experts on saying, okay, here we think there is something, can you go and do some forensics? Then you have a very different ways of handling incidents and a faster way of handling incidents than otherwise. That's why one of my markers for maturity is your time to detect and time to respond to incidents, right?
That's really interesting. And I think, sorry, just to quickly add that as well, because to your point, it's also the maturity of DevOps as well, then in a lot of ways. Or I guess, well, I don't know if you want to use the word DevOps, but more to your point about how quickly do you respond and detect. It kind of, that probably is a good marker to go that, wait, how quickly can I detect is probably the first one. Because that's hard as well. That's not easy, especially how big the organization is.
Yeah, and that's also the reason why chaos engineering is so important to me, is we keep saying, time to detect is important, but we don't test it, right? Time to detect an outage, if you don't test it, or many banks have an obligation to recover services within 1 hour or 4 hours. You have the RTO, but we never test it, right? You're just praying all year long that you won't have an incident. And the day it happens, you try to recover within 4 hours or within 1 hour. Unless you test it continuously, then you don't know, right? And so chaos engineering is one of those practices of not only testing it, but reducing this time by just introducing failure. So you first inject failures that maximum would create that you can recover within seconds or minutes, right? That won't break anything. So you build this confidence, but eventually what you want is to be able to have a team that is able to deal with any side effects and reconfigure and go back to normal or to a better solution if needed, because they know the system well, they know the security well, and they can react to it.
Yeah, and that's probably a good segue into, I guess, if people hearing this and they want to start, like, oh, I want to start chaos experimentation from today. Is there a need for them to know threat modeling? Because we kind of spoke about quite a bit about threat modeling as well. Is there what should they be looking at studying? I'm sure they can go to your book, they can go to Aaron's book, and like there's that as well. But while we're waiting for that, is there anything that they can learn to kind of start working on this, just to build the foundational knowledge for it?
Well, the book is not out yet, so
Yeah, I mean, that's
we
what I'm
can't
saying.
really
While
now.
we wait for that, book, is there something that they can
Of course,
start? Like,
of
should
course.
they do threat modeling or?
No, I mean, threat modeling is a very important aspect of modern security because it allows you to tailor your control for what the application is supposed to do instead of just putting like pre-canned security alerts. So if you want to do advanced chaos experiment, yes, you will try to tailor it to the application. So it will kind of be linked to what is logical or what makes sense for this application. You wouldn't do, hey, let's do an SQL injection on an application that doesn't have SQL at all, right? But you can start with very simple stuff, right? You can start with, am I able to detect if someone changed the firewall configuration? Am I able to detect if someone creates an account? And I have my son coming here and like I woke him up. He's a little bit sleepy. It's it's 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really nice. I promise
Sorry.
I won't take you for longer as well. Well, you can
No
you can bring
worries.
him online, man, if you want, but totally happy
Oh,
to have his
he's back to bed. He was still a little bit sleepy.
Oh.
I won't give him coffee, so. But,
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, you probably should not.
So,
to your point, so they can start learning today by just starting with small experiments. I think a quick comment from Paul as well. Again, it's like cheating on your taxes and hoping you don't get audited. That's pretty much sums up. Yes, that is on point, my friend.
It's like hiring a lawyer to test that your defenses are good enough, that you can explain to the tax office in reasonable ways that you had a reason for doing it this way.
Yeah, actually, that is true. Like, oh, but I had my lawyer look into this, so it should be fine.
No, but it's a very good comment. If you look today where security is going, we do more and more crisis management drill with executive management, where you hammer them because you need to flex this muscle on being able to respond to those things. But we hammer the executives on theoretical scenarios and tabletop scenarios. You also need to hammer your teams. It's not about being bad or something when you prep your CEO for crisis management. You're not telling him you're bad. You're just making sure that it becomes better over time, and that's the same with the team, right?
Yeah, and I look at that as a fire drill, right? Everyone knows what a fire drill is, and we all do fire drills. Well, I guess when we were all in the offices, we were doing fire drills when there is there's no fire. The point is not because there's a fire, but the point is when there is an actual fire, you're able to respond to it effectively, right? Because you're creating that behavior.
And if you look in buildings, they also come and put some smoke on top of the detectors to make sure that all of them are working. They will do public announcement regularly to make sure that people can hear. So you need to test all of these, right? And that, in a way, a chaos experiment is you would start with all those, testing each of the controls individually until one day you take a smoke grenade, you throw it somewhere, you see how things happen. You wouldn't do that on day one with a building of thousands of people.
Not in your office when people are there as well, I guess. That's production. That's like production experiment where you just throw a smoke grenade inside a office where people are there. We would not condone it.
That's kind of what you're aiming towards, making sure that even if you have a fire in one building or something, it doesn't disrupt your business, right? You're organized so that even if you have some of the staff or your staff on the stair to evacuate the building, your production is not going to go down.
Perfect. And we kind of look towards the tail end of the show as well. I've got I guess I've got 3 fun questions for you. Shouldn't be that many, just 3. What do you spend most time on when you're not working on chaos engineering or technology?
Very good Oh, when I'm not working on technology, this one is hard because when I spend
You're
most
always
time
working in
is on
technology.
on technology. Um, I have a personal issue with the way we do security today. So I have a few pet projects. Pet project. I help a few companies as well who I think are looking at it the right way.
Yeah.
Read, quite important to stay up to speed and trying to read things that I would normally read. I wouldn't normally read.
Oh, like
So
what are you reading these days?
to broaden my, I mean, we know that a lot of those experiments is about avoiding the bias and experimentation, and you know that human organization have a tendency for bias and for reinforcing beliefs,
Yep.
and so I'm trying to challenge my own self-reinforcement of beliefs. It's hard, but you don't want to create a new dogma, right? It's all these agile DevOps, chaos engineering are very useful. It's not applicable to everything, and it can be used for other things as well in the same mindset. But you also need to make sure that you're mindful of not coming up with like this is the practice, right?
Or this
Otherwise,
is
you
the
create
Bible.
what we have. Otherwise, we create what we have today in DevSecOps, which is to do DevSecOps, you need to have your SAST, your DevS, and your YAST being automated in a pipeline. That's not really so. That's really where you need to be able to flex your muscle to be a little bit more
Yeah,
open-minded.
perfect answer, man. And I love the fact that you're reading. I need to develop them myself as well. It's so hard. What is something that you're proud of, but not on a social media?
Oh, my kids.
Nice. This is awesome. And I think we probably could have had an intro with one of your sons, I guess. But yeah, definitely a great answer, man. What's your favorite cuisine or restaurant that you can share with people?
Cuisine. Well, I'm married to a Japanese, so I have a slight bias towards Japanese cuisine. So I'm French, so I do like French cuisine. I'm pretty open-minded. My wife and I, we really like Vietnamese as well. So the flavors you have and those. So that's a type of cuisine. Restaurants. Our favorite is still today a restaurant we went to in Hong Kong called BO Innovation.
Okay.
Very experimental cuisine. That was really mind blowing and really enjoyed it. Unpretentious but very amazing food and very eye stunning and all those things. So that was a very good experience. So
Wow.
if
Okay.
it still exists, and I hope it does, just go there. Difficult to book, so we're not the only ones who like them. But
Right. Okay.
that was
Wow.
really
So
good.
probably book in advance before you go to visit Hong Kong, I guess. Or if someone is watching from Hong Kong, just let us know what you guys think of that as well. But where can people find you, Jerome, on the social medias of the world?
Yeah, I'm not that much of a social media guy. People can always LinkedIn me, can email me. Twitter, I look at it once in a lifetime. I know I should be better at that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You and
I'm
I
not
both.
doing face.
You and I both,
I'm
Jerome.
not doing Facebook, and I don't even know what are the other social media.
Wait,
10 years ago, I was
you're not
thinking
on
I work in
TikTok.
tech, so I will not have this problem of a generation gap with my kids. Like, no, I do have this generation gap. So the best way is LinkedIn. Still, I like the fact that it's still professional and a little bit less violent than whatever you get as a comment on Facebook. So
Yep. I mean, the community is an example of it as well. Everyone who we have here is either on LinkedIn or YouTube, but I think we've been able to create a community where a lot of people are supportive, and as you can see from the questions as well, we're all in a similar mind space about certain
yeah,
terms, especially DevSecOps. But I'm not
I
going to go
think
there.
your community is perfect for security chaos engineering. Like
Yeah,
this constructive mindset of not blaming each other. This is a core of what DevOps is a blameless retro.
yeah.
And this culture, which you've created an amazing community. So kudos.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of valuable information, at least going by the questions that came through. So Thank you so much for taking the time out. And I would encourage people to reach out to you on LinkedIn and hammer you all the security chaos engineering questions and experiments that they can be running.
So it doesn't have to be only chaos engineering.
You can talk about the Hong Kong restaurants as well, or more to come?
No. But there is more about security, the new security practices than just chaos engineering. There is a lot of value in cloud native architecture, a number of practices. There is a lot of value in what I call the DevOps, which includes ops like bug bounties, red teaming, and all those things. I'm happy to have people, reaching out, but also telling me, hey, this works, this doesn't work. We've tried and we failed. There is nothing worse than self-reinforcing by just looking at success stories and ignoring the failures.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from people who say, hey, this is a good idea. Ask a question, but also just telling me this is plain
perfect.
Wrong, right?
And I would encourage people to reach out as well, because Jerome is a super nice dude who's been, like, from the day I've been speaking to him, he's been super helpful. And clearly, thank you so much for waking up early as well. Like, now finally it's 7 a.m. your time, so appreciate you woke up super early to kind of come on the show. And I'm looking forward to kind of having you again and probably talk about some of the other cloud native aspects of I guess security as we're maturing in that space. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.